This is the general document. It's going to open up on a random page. It looks like 18, I guess. But what I have here is your typical InDesign template over here in the Pages palette. It'll be on the upper right here. You can also open it if you have it closed from window, or again, you can rearrange your workspace to advance to have it look basically like what you're seeing on the screen. But what you can see in this document is basically a 24-page piece. You're going to see that it goes from page 1 to 20. So here's my pages. It goes, but it actually has 24 pages because you see 1, 2, 3, and 4 numbering pages stops. And so that's the beginning of the book. And then it renumbers itself here at 5, and then it renumbers itself to 1. The purpose of that is really simple. Basically, that I wanted the page numbers to start at page number 5 to be 1, and not page number cover to be page 1. And so you can change the numbering and section options in InDesign to do such a thing like that. And so there's certain tools, like if you wanted to automatically have InDesign number the pages, we can go through all that too. I'll show you how you can do that, how you can create different sections within InDesign to number in different ways. So you can do Roman numerals and that type of thing. But essentially I wanted to give you just a high-level overview of what this document contained in the layers and the pages. So it's a 24-page document. Looks like it has 20, but the first 4 pages are restart the numbering. One of the things I do have is in the layers panel here, you'll see that I have a locked layer at the very top, and I call it magenta here. This is all the magenta typography that you find at the top of the page. And this essentially is not intended to be print or anything like that, or even be part of your design, but it's sort of a guide. So in the next assignment, what I'm going to ask you to do is come up with, gather your source imagery, and then bucket it out into 3 different sections, right? An A, B, and C subfolder, whatever that subfolder ends up you calling it, and we'll go over all that later. But once you get your folder structure of all your content in place, this kind of will show you where to place that content on the images. First thing I do typically when I open up an InDesign document is I make sure that my view and display performance is at the typical display. So I don't want to see all the objects in high res. That's just going to kind of slow my machine up. So if I zoom in on a image here, this is a placed PNG file. And I go over to display performance and hit typical display, it's going to be kind of like really pixelated and terrible looking. But in reality, this image is not looking terrible, right? And I can know this by a couple different ways. One, just knowing what the nature of the file is and me working with it in the past. 2, I can actually click on the image and hit view and display performance and click high quality display. So this is going to give me a realistic interpretation or visual of what this image is actually going to look like in reality. So I'm going to go view display performance typical display again, because I don't want to have my machine render all of the images at high res, because there's plenty of instances of the images, and I don't want it to lag my computer behind. So that's kind of why documents in InDesign like this, especially these multi-page catalog type pieces, magazines, what have you, have the option to view it at a low-res display. It's all about just being more efficient with your the time you have with your machine and taking it easy on it. So I'll go back to page 1 here. Of course, you can navigate to different pages just by double-clicking them in the Pages palette. Kind of navigates faster if you have like a 100-page document, for instance. Sometimes this as well. But you'll see that the jig layer, the jig magenta layer here, has a front cover. So this just establishes where your front cover images will be. Lifestyle pages, and then a lifestyle page here, and then shoe section. So lifestyle page is essentially going to be well, and actually this isn't technically a lifestyle, but this is where I'm introducing this section of shoes. So this would say like section choose A, men's or women's or children's or whatever. So that's just a mislabeling there, so keep that in mind. And I always forget to change that, sorry about that. But essentially, this this magenta typography is just a guide for you. Eventually this turns off, and then all your artwork and however you name your sections and stuff appear as how you wish, essentially. And then I separated out pieces like the typography. This is just the straight base typography, and then the background element too. And this folio element I'm not using in the document because some people might use it, some people won't, and that's totally fine. One other thing about InDesign here is that you're going to see it's got a lot of these different blue shoes, right? This is actually just multiple instances of the same file. So that's how InDesign typically works, as you know, is that you'll have one single file, but you will have multiple instances of it. So this file here, and I'll pull out my links panel here and then just kind of expand this a little bit to see the image. This file is a PSD file, Nike demo _ small file, but it's just placed over and over and over again, just like an Illustrator, right? So I can copy Command C, Command V, paste that instance in, it'll show up here in my links palette. Now on page 2 with it, I can drag it over to page 3, and you can see this little number here is changing based on what page that is. So if you have a file in your links palette that you know you need to go at and maybe change the layering options of it, you can do that just by jumping into the links palette, clicking on one of these instance numbers of the file that you're trying to get to, and then it'll jump right to it, select it on your interface for you, and you can kind of work on it from there. Another nice thing about working in this PSD, kind of back in the old day, you could not use InDesign or use the original kind of page formatting type InDesign software programs with PSD files, right? So you'd have to convert the art document from a PSD to like a PNG or a JPEG or something else to put into what was called back in the day Quark Express, which is basically a page layout software program that another company had sort of the market on. So everyone had to take their PSD files from Adobe and then convert them over, and etc. Since InDesign, you were able to place PSD files directly in, and you can actually select these files, have them placed, which is something that you couldn't do before, but also directly open them from InDesign to Photoshop, so you can make any color tweaks and then jump back to InDesign and see it update in real time, rather than kind of making an update, having to resave it, replace it again, etc. It kind of added more steps the old way than doing it now. So that's one thing. Another thing too, and you can see, you can actually group different files together in InDesign. So much like Illustrator, I'd say InDesign is probably closer to Illustrator than it is in Photoshop. The only difference is you can place Photoshop images in there and then still and then create basically a print-ready PDF out of it, along with doing all of your other typography work. So what I have here is and I'm going to hit Command-Shift-G, which is basically the same keyboard shortcut as Illustrator to ungroup things. You can see that this image with the shoe and the shadow are actually totally separate from each other. But if I move this away, in my layers palette, I see the Nike shoe is the same image, and then here I'm clicking the shadow piece, and then that's still the same Nike shoe image. And what's happening here is that this image is actually, and it being the nature of a PSD file, InDesign is allowing me to actually hide or show specific layers within the PSD file in InDesign. So I could have a PSD file theoretically with a lot of different layers in it, maybe different styles, I'm not sure what I want for a cover, etc. And I can turn it on or off and view it within context in InDesign to kind of get me closer to my final, yep, that's the one moment. So for this piece, you can actually go to Object and Object Layer Options in your menu, and you can see that the layers that my Photoshop document has are multiple here, shoe 1, shoe 2, shoe 3, and I'm hiding and showing different layers. And if I hit my preview box, you can see that this is what shoe 1 looks like, 2, and 3. So in reality, this Photoshop document actually has multiple shoes within it of the same style, right? So this can make it efficient in this type of application if you were in need of actually taking this group of shoes and instead of going File, Place for oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so if you click on your object, and then if you go up to Object and Object Layer Options, it's right here. And there's probably a keyboard shortcut for it, but I don't really know it. Then you'll come up to this Object Layer Options menu, and you can turn on or off whatever layer within that Photoshop document you want to show or hide. So that's why, like, when I work in a document like this, and I have 3 different styles of the same shoe, or I'm sorry, 3 different color variations of the same shoe, I place them all as the same, and then once I get my placement right at that step, then I go back and then I just turn on and off layers to change it up. Instead of going to File, Place, Resize, all that other fun stuff, it just makes it easier that way. Another thing about your object here is you can click on it and see that actually my thumbnail is actually changing. Maybe it's hard to see there, but this is kind of like a tiny green shoe. Here's a tiny red shoe. It's sort of, this thumbnail is really giving you a preview of what this object is looking like, right, in context. And what I like about the link menu is that I can actually expand this thing. And this is another like thing that InDesign brought as a value add to designers from those older programs, was that in the links palette I can click on an object and see what color space it is, what actual pixels per inch it is, what effective pixels per inch it is, etc. So actual and effective, like what does that mean? All these other dimensions too, there's tons of them. So what does actual and effective mean? Well, this object, if I click on it, is just about 99%, about 100% in width, 100% in height of its actual size. And its actual pixels per inch dimensions is 300, so it's a 300 resolution image. If I was to click my just move tool and then scale it up to just some kind of random size and click on this object, now you can see that effectively it's 154 pixels per inch. So, right, just that concept where you increase the size of something with a set amount of pixel resolution, you're going to lose pixels. Therefore, your pixels per inch is going to, or dots per inch or whatever, is going to drop. So now we're at 154. What's nice about this too is that I can actually take this object and let's just say, you know, I really wanted this to be right here in my spread. I wanted it to actually be bigger, in fact. Let's just say I wanted to have this be my section, right? So I'll copy that text, paste it here, and then I'll say this is my men's shoes. Yeah. Oh, it's got to be apostrophe. Sorry. Need to make sure it's grammatically correct here. All right, so I'm going to make it larger. Right, so this could become like whatever, like a really incredibly minimalistic. I'd love to add some more stuff to this. Like, you know, actually I probably will. So minimalistic design here. I'll add this. Let's just say something like that. So let's just say this was my really quick and easy intro page to this next section, right? If I wanted my shoe to be this size, I certainly could do that. and it is a lower resolution. But what I would do first is actually go click on the object and go up into my links menu, and then I'm going to hit Reveal in Finder this time. So what I'm going to do is actually make a copy of this in my Finder window. So I'm going to copy and paste, Command CV, and then so this image here is going to be my Nike big image. All right, and so what I'm going to do is actually drag this into Photoshop. It's kind of scary. Okay, so I'm going to drag that into Photoshop, and that's open and that's fine. So what I'm going to do then is go back to InDesign and say, okay, how big is this thing? So this is at 200% of its original size. I want to get it up to here, so I want to make it a width and height of approximately these numbers. So what I typically do when I'm working really quickly is I find which of these two numbers is larger. Is it the width or the height of the original? I'll copy that, and I'll jump back into Photoshop and start sizing up this object to those specifications. So let's see. I'm going to go to Image Size, and I'm going to actually just see there. So I'm pasting my width in inches up. My resolution is going down, and that makes a lot of sense. And I'll hit OK. And then I'll just go back, and then I'll hit my resample button, and then go 300, and then kind of look at this thing to see what kind of damages I have on the shoe. Is it really bad, or what? Can I get away with this? Maybe I change this to, instead of preserving the details, make sure it has it's a little bit smoother. Well, that didn't really do very much. It kind of did. So I'll just hit OK. And then so what I'll do is just save this large one, and then jump back into InDesign, and then literally it'll just select this image and then hit this relink button. So I'll expand this a little bit more. In my links panel, then here's my relink option. I'll just hit that, navigate to my other document, right? So I got to point InDesign to the original that I want to relink to. Hit OK, and then it'll just place it in there. It actually read all of the layers in between the big one and the small one automatically, so they were identical in layers and stuff. So it actually just turned on the green shoe for me automatically. Sometimes that works pretty well. So if I select this image then and look, I have it at 300 by 300 in resolution and size and everything. Up here, I'm at 100%. Wait. 99.9%. I can even go further if I wanted to. I could zoom into this thing and then hit View, Display Performance, High Quality, and then it'll give me a rendering after a while of what it'll look like higher quality, which is pretty sharp from here. So I'd be happy with that. So typically what I will do in a document is I'll size everything up, place everything in, and then once I go through all that work, then I'll go back, check the, click on each image, check, 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 check. I'll do what I have to do between InDesign and Photoshop to optimize it, and then it's done. Everything's high res and it's done. So yeah, that usually takes, like with a catalog like this, it might take like 2 hours or 3 hours, because once you start going through your process, it's going to be a lot faster. You're just going to go through it, and it'll just be like you'll be like basically a machine going through and optimizing all that stuff. All right, so that's that. I can give you more of a high-level overview of this. So let's say, what else here? Master pages, that's something that I should probably go over here. So our master page is in the Pages palette, and what InDesign is going to do is have this A master page created for you. And you'll see this letter A in all of the pages here in the document. So this means that A master, the A master page is applied to all of these pages. Okay, so what does that mean? So I'll go to the A master page and look at it. It's basically blank. That basically means that the A master page is totally blank. So what you want to do is actually create a new page, let's just say, and then this will call it B master. So this will create a spread called B master here. I can even actually, well, I'll hold off on that. So what I'll do is just add a piece of art to this master page, let's say, like, I don't know, maybe I want to do like a new footer or something, just to see how that works. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Actually, that's a good kind of thing to go over. So I'll just have this be a page, and I'll probably want to make this type smaller so it shows up. I'll make it 8 point here. That's probably a little too small. Make it larger. All right. So page, and so this will be my page option. So I'll add a page number here, depending on whatever page I'm at in the document. I want this page to show the actual number of the actual page that I'm on. So I'll make a duplicate of this and then move it over here like so. So we'll make it left reading and right reading here. So one of the things you can do really is just add a special symbol here. So for the current page number, the symbol is, and if I go up to type, insert special character, and then under symbols, actually it's under markers. You'll see this current page number option. And there's a bunch of other things too which are going to be useful to you in the future. But current page number is going to actually add this little letter B to it, okay? Might be a little confusing, but what I can do is actually copy and paste this over to the other side, have the same properties, and right align that. So let's just say I wanted a different look for one of these pages in my document. So let's say I want these first four these first 4 pages of my InDesign document to have this B master style to it. Actually, what I would do is just drag B master down, and then just drop it onto this little icon here in my pages palette. I'll do it again to the next page, and you can see in the document here in my thumbnails, it's just changing those A's to B's. All right. So my 4 pages is changing those A's to B's, and now I'm seeing that, yep, that's my footer is showing up just the way I want it to. Yep, page 2, page 3, page 4, and then it goes back to that A master style, which is totally blank. So what you can then start doing is if you lay out your folios, which are what these items are called, basically information at the bottom of your document here. If you start doing that, making those master pages, your job is going to be a lot easier when you start numbering the document, because now I don't have to change each of these numbers depending on what page I want it to reflect. I can actually just go back into my B master page. I can see the style and say, okay, yeah, this is just a current this is a marker that denotes a current page in the document. If I want to make a change to this type of thing, like a color change or what have you, I want to do like a piece of art, let's just say, I'm just using my pen tool to draw it out. And then maybe I want to change the style to, I'll throw it in the back. So maybe I want to change this to look more like something like white over black on the right side, but not on the left side. I can go into my B master page. I can jump into that document, make those changes, and then see in real time that those changes are actually reflecting in the document itself. And on and on and on. So I would, typically do something like that. Typically, I wouldn't have actually the word page on there, but that's just, for a sample. If, say, I wanted to put my Nike check icon in line with this on every single page, and I don't want to have to like go into it and then kind of like nudge it around and make sure it's completely lined up, accurate, and perfectly. What's nice in InDesign is that I can actually paste it into a line of copy as if it's a piece of art, or I'm sorry, as if it's a piece of text. So what I'll do is just kind of go into my BMaster page here. And then I just copied that check and I'll paste it in. I'll move this out of the background so I can see it. And so it's not visible, so I want to make sure that it's white. Ooh. I might have 2 layers there. Yeah, I do. Oops. Something weird about that. It's not really cut very well, but that's all right. Right, so something like that, and this makes it easy because I have it pasted into this line of copy, this piece of art. So if I wanted to like drop it a little bit on every page, I can use my type tools then to do it rather than use my nudge buttons to move it all around and so on to line things up perfectly. So, you know, type is a big thing in InDesign essentially, but I can just jump into my type and tables option here. And then I can open up either character or paragraph, right? So I'll open up character, and what this is going to allow me to do is actually drop the characters below the baseline, so that invisible line that's really underneath all of these, right? So this is the baseline marker here. So if I want to drop this Nike check below the baseline, I can just do that by dropping it as if it's a piece of text. And then what's nice about that is, let's say I want to drop it down here. What's nice about that is doing it on a master page is going to allow it to be consistent all throughout. Every document that has this master page applied to it. So that page, etc. If I wanted to just quickly apply it here, I could just do that just like that. I'd have to delete the old one, but that would be essentially how you could do something like that. So master pages are helpful. Again, artwork is really great here to like test out, see if it works, that type of thing. Typically, I might have like a master page for some interior spread lifestyle shots, what I call them, or just the layout itself. Or I'll start out with one layout, which is one of our assignments. We'll just do one layout. We'll work on one, and then we'll just take those elements that we have completed and apply them to a master page. So if we're happy with them, just kind of template that out, and then just apply to all of your different thumbnails. All right. So the difference between selection and direct selection tool. This has been newly fixed in InDesign, which makes it a little bit easier. So my selection tool, right, is essentially going to select the object within the bounding box. So typically I'll select that bounding box here, and I'll color it something really bright, make that text, the weight pretty thick. So my object sits within a bounding box. So my direct selection tool here is that dark arrow tool, and I can actually increase or decrease the size and proportions of the bounding box to sort of frame the object or that PSD document within the bounding box. If I hover over the center of this document here, you'll see this little circle pop up. So, and you'll see actually my icon is turning to a hand. So this denotes a direct selection tool. So this is the same thing as selecting the direct selection tool and hovering over the image within a bounding box. All of your placed graphics, like raster graphics and vector graphics, if you've built them outside of Illustrator and then placed them in, will have this bounding box automatically applied to it. What this direct selection tool does when I click on an object within a bounding box is it moves the object within the bounding box. If I press my S or scale tool, just like in Illustrator, and click within the bounding box with the direct selection tool having selected an object within that bounding box, I can actually shrink this object within the bounding box. Moreover, my direct selection tool will also enable me to select the corner of any kind of any anchor point within a piece of art in InDesign, and then move that anchor point as such. So my bounding box could then take the form of a different shape, perhaps. I can actually press the plus sign, which is the Add Anchor Point tool here, under the pen tool, and just hitting the plus sign, I can add points to a bounding box, and then use my direct select tool to kind of change the shape of a bounding box, let's just say. So this becomes helpful, particularly with type. If you want typography to kind of flow around the shape of an object, and you want to change the shape of an object and see type actually move dynamically through it, you can do that. So let's do that. Let's do that quickly here. I'll have some type here. I'll go. Actually, I can just add lorem ipsum here. If I go to type, let's see, and fill with placeholder text, I can fill this bounding box with just random text, placeholder. People will do that because if they want to see the style of their text within a layout, they'll do that. These words don't really mean anything, but they're just meant to show there are going to be words here, right? So, so I'll just fill that in, and with this bounding box, or this shape selected, this frame, if you will, I'm going to go to Object, and let's see. Actually, let's see. Actually, want to wrap text around that. Shoot. I forgot how to do that. Let me see if I can just do it real quick. I know it was really easy to find. Oh, text wrap. Okay. It's under the window panel. So I have to do. Okay, so I open the text wrap panel here, and then what I'm going to have to do is select the object, and then here's my options. So it defaults to no text wrap, but you can have the text wrap around that bounding box. And then so this is going to be like a square text wrap around that, but I want to actually wrap it around the shape. So this is the next text wrap here, wrap around the shape. And then so this is going to make this bounding box wrap around the shape, right? So what I'm going to do actually is sort of a more real-world example. I'll have that text wrap box open. I'll copy, cut, and then paste that object in. And so essentially the text wrap is actually applied to the object itself. So what I'm going to do is actually draw another object around here. And actually I'm pretty sure you could wrap to the object and just let the device sort of do it for you. But this is just kind of going to show essentially me just drawing this object around, and I'll apply that text wrap to it. Oop. And then I'll have no text wrap on that shoe, but text wrap around this shape, and then I'll just make this shape kind of invisible. So sometimes you might want to do that if you want more control over your text wrap. So essentially this is just an image with an invisible image around it with a text wrap applied. And this is more common with like editorials, let's just say, or like mostly like catalogs, more editorial pieces, I would say. I can select those objects, I'll make it bigger just to kind of tinker with it, etc. This text box here, as you probably know already, there's more text included in this text box. So one of the things that you can see here in InDesign is really great is it's going to add this little plus sign at the bottom of your text box if there's more text within the text box that is not being seen because of our lack of largeness of text box, for lack of a better word. So what's also interesting too is that it detects the errors in your document too. This is a great, this pre-flight panel at the bottom, and you can open it by just clicking this little upside down arrow and hit pre-flight panel. This is great. It'll actually tell you where text is in your document that's overset, right? So this is our overset text box, and this is our overset text icon. To unoverset it, I can either expand this text box, or I can just click on the plus sign and then just create another text box after I've clicked on it somewhere else. Until, let's just say, all of our text is able to fit within the document. And then so once it fits, and I'll kind of close this window out, you can see that there's no errors. So this no errors icon is good for that. This comes in major handy when you're working with a lot of text, you're changing paragraph and character styles within your document that are actually making your text get overset and not inadvertently. So then you don't have to actually click on every text box to see if my icon is showing up there. I can just open up this panel and then find directly where that piece of overset text is. And then just fix it until that's green, you know. That's kind of that in a nutshell. I don't want to get too far deep into it. But that's pretty much how it's sort of working. Let me see what else I wanted to kind of go over. We did go through something very basic last time. Let me see if I can get that image back up. Get rid of this text. That I want to actually demonstrate just really quickly so it's captured here. Under Window and Output, we did talk about the separations preview. So once you click on that, I can see under my separations preview the separations of colors. If I hit under View Separations, I'll be able to see my CMYK separations here. I can also, this is going to help me tell if I have any RGB images here, so anything that I don't want to be in there for a print piece, and then vice versa for a web piece. So typically what I do is actually go through a document like this, and I turn off all of the inks except for one, and I go through the layout to see specifically in my text, if my text is all one color, is it all black or is it a Pantone color, or something like that. So I'll do that for my text typically. In the future, you're probably going to really want to use that. A lot of people will use like gray if they want their text to be a little bit gray, not so black. All the time, you can use this panel to kind of check that too. But this is helpful for you to use to really see if you have any colors that you don't want to be in there before you send it off to print. Another thing is the swatches box here. This is going to show me if I do have any RGB colors, and I can actually just get rid of them in one kind of swoop. Like let's say I didn't want, well, first thing, typically what I do is go to my swatches up at the top right and actually select all my unused swatches, and then I just dump them right away because I don't want to really be confused by all the swatches. And this is after I make a mess in my swatches palette and experiment with a lot of different colors, etc. I'm noticing here that it looks like I have an RGB color somewhere in here. What I can do actually is to avoid any of me searching through where's my RGB, etc. I can click on that RGB color and just hit this little garbage can and just pick a color that I want to replace it with. So I want to replace it with just black, not this RGB black looking color. And then there, it's done. It's going to go through and make sure that InDesign converts any instances of that RGB color to black. So it's going to just wipe out all the colors and then replace it. Now, this comes very handy when you are, I mean, it becomes handy a lot because sometimes I'm working on a project and I do like oh, I have like this really forest green, and they have this like subtly not so forest green, and you have all these different swatches, and you're going through and experimenting out to see what's best. And then once you're finished, you're like, okay, yeah, that's perfect. You want to like get rid of your swatches in that swatches palette because you don't want to confuse yourself later on. So typically I'll just dump them, and then sometimes I'll forget to click on an object and change its color, let's just say in the layout. You know, like let's just say that was on page 25 and it was like, you know, I'd never be able to find it unless I spent like a half hour on it. Things like that, you know, if I were to say, no, I don't want blue in my layout, I just want it to be black, then it would have to change it, you know, like that if it was a fast fix like that. Let's see. The thing I love about InDesign the most, I would say, is the effects that I can bring from Photoshop into it. So our layering options from Photoshop work in InDesign as well. So let me copy, cut, and paste this object over here. This could come in handy for you. I do experiment a lot with overlapping stuff in InDesign like this. But just like in Photoshop, I can click on my image, my raster-based or vector-based image, and I can go under the effects palette, and then under here I can actually change the layering, just like in Photoshop, for this image. So I'll just get closer to get more of a feel of what's happening. Right, so here's my, oh, that's lagging. Sorry, let me change the view here. Oh, it is typical, okay. That's good. So, you know, kind of going through here, I can just sort of change the overlapping effects of this and see if this is something that might add to your piece or something like that. You know, experiment with that. I think that's kind of cool. You know, and it'll work with type obviously too. Whatever layers are behind this object layer will be affected. So InDesign really is sort of a really nice marriage between Illustrator and Photoshop, and it is definitely my favorite program. You can use the pen tool here. You can actually create a shape with a pen tool, make it an image box. So I can paste an image into that crazy pen tool shape if I had created it, any kind of shape you wanted to, etc. There is a lot more to it, but this is just a very high level sort of basics. I want to make sure that I covered everything. This is something you're probably going to come across a lot, so let me just go ahead and get it out of the way right now. I'm going to grab a shoe, right? And so this shoe is within this bounding box. I'm going to color the bounding box so it's more noticeable. Where am I? I'm going to get lost in all this stuff. Just rearrange. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to color this. That's what I was doing. Typically when I'm placing an image in InDesign, especially when I have a lot of these pieces like that, I'm going to place it and it's going to place like oversized, something like that. Sometimes it'll place it like off in a different direction. Sometimes it'll come like totally off screen, let's just say. This is rare, but sometimes this happens. So you can see that I have an object here. It's placed in this box, but it's like it's not viewable. If I go unclick it, I'll click this box and it's showing up out here. It's totally out of view. It almost looks as though I have nothing in here. Okay, so a tool that I will use very often is where is it? Where is it now? I know the keyboard shortcut for it, but fitting. So you want to click that dialog box, and you'll go to Object Fitting, and then you can all of these different options. You have keyboard shortcuts for them. The one I typically use is the Command Shift Option E, which is a Fit Content to Frame. You can fit frame to content and that sort of thing, but what I'm going to do is fit content to frame, and actually it's going to fit it, and it's going to kind of stretch it out. So what I want to do is not that one. I want to go to, let me undo that. It's Command Shift Option E. It's this one. Wait, nope, it's over here. Fit content proportionally. And so that's going to fit it within the box perfectly at the full file size dimensions. Command Shift Option E is the one that I love and use the most. Other than that, it's going to be object fitting and then fill frame proportionally. That's another one too. So both of those options will be able to, whatever happens with your object, just Command Shift Option E, and typically that'll just fill it perfectly. If I didn't have any transparent pixels around this image, it would just completely go to the edge of the box, and you would be able to rest assured that there would be no like tiny little pixels getting cut off or anything like that. So I definitely recommend memorizing Command Shift Option E. And oops. That is it for my